Hey everybody, welcome to the show today. Move Freely America YouTube and Rumble channels. We're super excited to have the state directors from Move Freely Florida, Tom, Phil, and Patty, along with freedom attorney Shawn McBride. Super exciting show. The Florida group has been leading the charge almost since the outset and has been a great example for the rest of the states to follow. Super excited to bring everybody in and get to know them a little bit better. And welcome everybody. Thanks for being here today. Glad to have you. So Phil's a little short on time today. He's on an overnight in a beautiful hotel room background there. Can't be quite as professional as my provided green screen by Chris Mills in Nevada. But regardless, I'm glad to have everybody. And we'll start with Phil first. So Phil, give us a little background on where you came from and how you got involved.
Sure. My name is Phil Prada. I am an airline captain on the Airbus, and I kind of go on a little background about myself. I was born in Brazil, immigrant parents, refugee, all that stuff. Came over to the land of the free for the American dream, and I was raised in D.C. Then now I live in Florida, but I've lived in Chicago and Columbus, Ohio, and Florida a few times back and forth. But a little background on myself on the sense of how I kind of got interested in this. I have always been interested in politics. Once I started flying and got comfortable, I went into politics. I started becoming involved with the union work, and then I became chair of the our union's government affairs for my airline. And I was in DC often. I spoke to a number of politicians from Paul Ryan, Pelosi, and Congress, a lot of congressional members. And we did quite a bit of work there. So that motivated me to, when I was in Chicago, to start my own lobbying company. So I did that, and that was kind of a rude awakening of how different the political spectrum is. But it was a pretty eye-opening experience. I was actually a Chicago Democrat, and a lot of the stuff that I saw there kind of motivated me into, I would say, an awakening of what reality is. So then I decided to leave that, and I moved to Florida, and then all this stuff happened. And somebody who's always been very motivated to do something, I kind of got back into the political realm pretty quickly and decided I got to use something I know at least to help out. So that's what got me into this. Right now I live down in the Orlando area with my wife, and absolutely love it there. And I just love being back in Florida after experiencing a lot of the stuff in Chicago. So that's kind of me in a nutshell.
So interestingly, like you said, you used to be a Democrat during the last election cycle. I mean, and Move Freely is nonpartisan, and we welcome anybody here from any viewpoints, just so long as you believe in medical freedom. But I had a cousin of mine, a classmate from initial training here at my airline, and two other people that I know who were Democrats in the past, who in the last election said they were switching to the Republicans and voting Republican because they didn't like what they saw going on with the Democratic Party, that it was a bridge too far. Like just briefly, what can you kind of pare down what made you change?
Yeah, I mean, I saw a lot of stuff there in Chicago. I lived right in the city. Once the riots began there, it happened literally where I lived, because I lived right in front of Trump Tower. So the riots began there. The news helicopters were all over us, and my wife and I actually had to scramble and get out to the burbs that night, because we started. It was getting pretty scary, and then we came back the next morning, and the city was, our beautiful city was on fire. Everything was shattered. It was a war zone. So once the shops and everything rebuilt, then they came back again and rioted again and released the prisoners, and you just see all these policies that they did that, for me as somebody, I'm kind of embarrassed to say I was pushing for some of those things back then, and then I saw a lot of those policies actually turn out, and the I don't want to say Republican Democrat, I like to use more conservative and liberal, mindsets versus parties, because parties designate kind of corporations because they are a lot of them are incorporated. But a lot of those policies started, I started seeing what the implications of those policies were. And, then I started seeing what's going on back in Florida where my family lives. And I just need to get back. Plus just the taxes, you pay a lot of money in taxes, the violence, which was incredible there. We had shots every night. Actually, a couple of weeks ago, the building that I just used to live in had somebody shot and killed, multiple shots fired at the building. One person was killed, 2 others were injured. And it was a nice area. Like I said, it was right next to Trump Tower. So, you just see those policies take place. And then everything with the vaccine mandates and how that government control came about. And it was day and night for me. It didn't take long.
Hell of a story. And if anybody ever has a chance to talk to Phil in the future and hear the full story, I've had the pleasure of speaking to him one-on-one, and it's quite the story. And it's well worth your time to sit down and listen to what he has to say. And I'm glad you're with us, Phil. And it's been a pleasure getting to know you here over the past few months, and look forward to working with you more.
Yeah, you as well.
Patty, how about you? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, my name is Patty Sedwick, and I've been a flight attendant for 3 years. My previous occupation was in accounting and bookkeeping. I did that for over 20 years, and I was born in Orlando, raised in the area. I live in Winter Park right now, which is just a little city just northeast of Orlando. I was married for many years, and then I'm divorced now. So I've been divorced for about 8 years. But after I got divorced and I realized I needed to get a full-time job, I didn't want to go back into accounting. I didn't want a desk job. And I guess when I was younger, I wanted to be a flight attendant. So I'm kind of realizing, or I just realized my, childhood dream, or one of them, to become a flight attendant. So I got into this career about 3 years ago, and little did I know where it was going to take me at the time. I do have 2 daughters, 23 and 20, so they're a little bit older. With everything going on recently, my daughters went through the public school system. They were indoctrinated. They've both gotten the shot. All of this has really just been, upsetting to me and eye-opening to me, what's happening in our world. And I have to admit, I've been pretty ignorant. I don't have a political background. I don't like politics at all. So, I think I've been part of the problem, is not really being aware of everything that's going on in the world until recently. I guess back when my company announced the mandates back in September, that's really when I started getting involved in these groups, these medical freedom groups. First with a group of coworkers and Telegram, and then through that, I guess I got connected with other airline employees from other airlines. And that's how I met Tom. Got connected with Tom, and Tom and I met at a Sanford rally, a local rally here. I think it was late last year. And he's the one who pretty much introduced me to Move Freely Florida and got me involved with Move Freely Florida. So
awesome. Glad to have you. And I know Tom's spoken very highly of you, so I look forward to getting to know you here more in the near future. And you were behind, weren't you in charge of the rally you guys had? Originally, you were trying to plan it at the airport, and then you had moved it to downtown. Weren't you kind of the main force behind that?
Oh, Yeah, another flight attendant at my company, and I guess we got the ball rolling on that. A lot of other people took over and made it into just an amazing rally. That was the Fort Lauderdale rally
Right.
back in January.
Cool.
So that was a pretty big thing.
A
And
lot of
that's
work going
when
putting those
Tom
rallies
took me down
together.
to that one. We went down together with Shawn.
And then that brings us into Shawn McBride, freedom attorney.
Hey, everybody. Go ahead, Tom. Yeah, so I'm Shawn McBride. I'm a corporate lawyer. I do business law from day to day. I really like, kind of what the foundation of America is supposed to be, entrepreneurial, independent. People are supposed to have the ability to do things they want to do with their lives and build businesses if that's part of what they want to do. Really love and believe in that. I've kind of been in the freedom movement as far as looking at the future of the laws and regulations and kind of where we're headed here for probably around a decade now. First, speaking out a lot about AI and technology and how that's shaping the marketplace and where we're going and how that could impact freedom. And then a couple of years ago, when the COVID outbreak hit, really started looking at some laws, particularly here in Florida, and there's similar laws in other states, but Florida is one of the worst sets of laws as far as state control over medical freedom. And the truth is, Florida's medical freedom right now rests on the governor. Without the governor, we would have no medical freedom. The written laws, the way they're written, could be challenged in court, but the way they're written, they basically allow the state to control your medical decisions, to force you to take treatments against your will, quarantine, isolate you against your will, use law enforcement officers to force you to take those treatments or to go in those quarantines and isolations, examination, testing. So there's a big gap, and the people that know what's going on are very concerned about these laws, and they know that we're kind of resting on that executive privilege, of having a governor that is, not using these laws, but these laws sit there dormant, waiting to be abused by any future tyrant. So just seeing that stuff brought me into the political fore. We built the American Freedom Information Institute to kind of get the word out to people, educate people on how they can be an advocate, teach them about these laws, get them in front of their state reps, get them in front of their senators, write the letters. We've had some success, starting movements to get some legislation improved. We're still a long way from where we need to go. And then, of course, those that are following closely with digital IDs and vaccine passports and these things that, even the red states, quote unquote, red states are considering, we're moving now to where these two different worlds that I mentioned at the beginning, AI, technology and freedom, and then medical freedom, the two are now starting to converge again. It's becoming very apparent that as we move into the future, unless we citizens speak up, AI technology is going to be used as tools to infringe on people's medical freedom. We can envision a world where you won't have true medical freedom because everything will be tracked and traced and proof of vaccine, proof of treatment. Some of these kind of principles of, sick unless proven healthy that we've seen over the last couple of years, they seem to be ingrained. And even here in Florida, where we love freedom, it's very possible we can end up in that place unless we're very proactive. And we're building a core of people that are being proactive, that are taking the actions and are really speaking up and saying, let's change this. We need more voices. We need more people getting into the movement. We need more people writing the letters. We need more rallies. We need more events because most people just don't know. And a lot of people are complacent because the media is not out there telling them that their freedom, hinges on the governor. They're not telling them that we're one person away from being perhaps the most tyrannical state in the entire United States. Change governor.
And that's not to be extreme for anybody who's watching. I mean, these are real issues that the citizens of Florida face, and we'll get into that a little bit more in the future or later in the discussion. But how did you get connected with Tom and with Move Freely? Where was the initial contact there?
Yeah, so we, I guess, right before that rally in Fort Lauderdale, as mentioned earlier, one of our subscribers or readers connected me and Tom, so Tom Oltorik, and just said, hey, you guys should talk. So happens we live near each other geographically. It was just a happenstance that happened to be the case. But through the work, and I think a lot of these connections that happen is just out there. There's various different voices. Him and I were both out there talking, and it's so happened that we were able to help each other and make our movements work better together. So we got connected through one of our readers.
That's awesome. And we'll give you a plug for your Substack later on in the show. I appreciate you being here. Thanks for joining us. Yep. And Tom, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh, well, thanks for having me, Tom. I really appreciate it. Nothing really special. Just came from the military, went to Southwest Airlines. That was it. Been there 26 years. The longest I've lived anywhere is here in my Central Florida town for the last 20 years. Last fall, when this whole thing got going, once our CEO said he was going to comply with the mandates, at that point, like a lot of other people, I was looking for the glide path to retirement, trying to decide when I was going to pull the plug and retire and do the RV thing or whatever would come my way. And but when the announcement was made, obviously that changed everybody's world, and here we all are. We're all together. We're doing things we never imagined. So the real story in all of this is the three people you see here, Patty and Phil and Shawn. Without them, I'm pretty much ineffective. Phil is bringing so much expertise in his lobbying background, his political background, very diverse. He's working with our candidate. His mission is to help get people elected. Patty brings a unique perspective, the ability to do detailed research and to be consistent on all of her stances and how she plugs people in. And then, of course, Shawn, as a collateral freedom attorney who works with us pro bono, because none of us are getting paid. This is all grassroots. We're all volunteers. We're all civically engaged constituents, but we're collaborating and working together in a more or less expeditionary environment. So we're task organizing and coming together. Not only the four people here that are key, but we also have other freedom groups in the state that are similarly oriented. Florida Freedom Keepers, Mom for Liberty, Mom for America, and others. Those are some of the more familiar names, but we're all kind of moving in the same direction, and we're staying networked and we're collaborating. The key was early on for any of your viewers, the key was we never shut down lines of communication. We never said that this person or this group couldn't help. When one of the subscribers said, you need to get in touch with Shawn McBride, I didn't say I was too busy. I said, yes, I will do that. When Shawn got familiar with the work I was doing and he said, I'd like you to speak at the Sanford rally, I could have said, I'm too busy. I'm not going to do it, but I am going to do it. I'll do that. That led to my connections with Patty. And then through the larger activism, we got involved with Phil. So everybody's bringing unique skill sets together. And this is happening across the state of Florida. 5 different airlines, now other work groups, other disciplines. They're coming together, they're networking, and they're realizing we're all moving in the same direction. So for me, with my military background, I'm able to bring staff work skills in where I can do program management and organization and try to keep things moving in the same direction when we don't really have a playbook or a blueprint to work with. So a lot of it is on the fly sort of stuff. Like I said, we're volunteers, obviously, just like everybody in Move Freely. We all have our day jobs, but we also create time and space in order to be civically engaged and active as constituents and collaborating with each other. So, I do have 3 boys. They're older. They're all college graduates. I am married 36 years. My wife hasn't fired me yet.
Well, God bless you. I'm glad to have you on. It's been a pleasure to know you and work with you, and just an absolute resource for both the airline group and for now Move Freely. So I want to talk a little bit later on after Phil leaves because I know he's crunched on time, but just that of the conservative-minded people getting up off the couch, getting off their phones or their devices and getting out and meeting people at rallies or being involved. And right here, you can see in this interview and in past interviews I've done with other people, how connected I would have never have met any of you had any of this ever happened, right? And not only the friendships that we build through the movement. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind that all of you will remain lifelong friends, but the working relationships and the knowledge and that everybody brings to the table and the mountains we can move when we work together. So, Phil, since how much time do you have? I
got enough time. I'm doing all right.
Well, tell me a little bit more about, like, from your perspective, what's going on in the state of Florida and what we have on the horizon, the things you're looking at, because you bring that diverse background, that perspective that a lot of people don't have.
Yeah, sure. So one thing I'm trying to really push for is it is campaign season now, and we really need to get involved. My opinion is that the only way to really change things, really change the medical laws to give us the protections we need and the freedoms we need, is to change the people there, or at least wake up some of the people. Because what I find out is when you talk to a lot of politicians, yeah, there are a lot of serious corruption, but there's a lot of lack of knowledge. And also, I think I would want to say some of the legislatures, even Congress, they don't want to believe some things. So I think it's about really getting a change in the legislature and Congress and all of the above. And so we have the elections coming up, and the primaries, I think, are the most important part right now, because the way the party system works, I'm not going to get too much into the party system, but if you really want to see a change, you do have to, I hate to say this, but in the state of Florida, you do have to register to be a Republican in order to vote for the primaries. Otherwise, your voice won't be heard. So if you're there saying, well, I don't believe in the rhinos, so I'm going to get rid of my Republican party and not vote. Well, you're not going to be voting in the primary, which means that other people will choose for you, other people not being we the people, being up in the top. So when the general election comes, now you're just deciding between two evils, either a rhino or a selected Democrat. And so you don't really get your voice heard unless you can vote in the primaries. And so that, I think, is at least my big thing right now. So I've been helping out. We do have a candidate running, Ken Davenport, and I would suggest all of you to go look him up, vote davenport.com. Ken Davenport is his name. He's in, I believe it's 35th district. And so I'm helping him out and giving some advice. We do have some good help. His campaign is taking off and doing pretty well. He is going door to door. He and his wife are both flight attendants, and I'll let Tom go into it a little bit more, but they had he had a medical issue, and he had to deal with it firsthand, and he survived. And his story encourages me to really help him and get him and others like him in the Florida legislature. I'm also working on the congressional side, getting our name out there and networking in that side. There is a candidate running for, I believe it's Florida Congressional District 23, but due to the redistricting, it's a little bit complicated. We don't know exactly what district it's going to be. But Carla Spalding, she is an amazing candidate. She is from Jamaica and served in the Navy, was a nurse. And then everything with COVID, she saw all the reality of everything and decided to run. And now she is going to unseat Debbie Wasserman Schultz. So that's the seat. It's a big seat. So that's what we're trying to push. And I'm in talks with her and her campaign. She actually invited me tomorrow to a event at the Trump Golf Course in Palm Beach. Very excited for that. Guest speaker will be Laura Trump, and the host is Lynn Patton. She was the highest ranking African American serving under Trump's cabinet, so under the HUD. For
Man, I wish I could be there. Sounds
yeah,
like a
so I'm excited to go to the Trump golf course, but more importantly, I'm going there to meet and discuss Move Freely to a lot of the people there and see how we can all help each other out. Because from me talking to a few others, we all want to help each other out and do the same. We're all in the same fight. So through the campaign, I think we can get the name out there and get more people active. And that's the big key, is getting as many people active, getting as many people participating in the elections, helping with the candidates, going door to door for these candidates. Because when you go door to door for them, they don't forget that. And now your voice is heard. So now you can actually talk to them. And that's what this country is about. It's about us, we the people, talking to our representatives and making sure they know who they represent. So that's my part.
Well, I was happy to hear. I went and I actually met with my state representative here in District 150 in Texas, and they were extremely receptive to Move Freely and the Medical Freedom Act that we're proposing to them. And by the end of the meeting, we were strategizing how we could work together to get some of these bills passed during regular session next year. So anybody who wants to chime in, when is regular session for you guys? How often does it run? Is it some states are every year, some states are every other year. What's the political landscape look like forthcoming?
Yeah, so Florida has a session, has an official session once a year, lasts 2 months, 60 days, and so the next one, and it's unusual because it shifts the starting month every other year. So the next cycle is coming starting March of 2023 till early May 2023. Then it'll go to January to March because it moves 2 months depending on whether it's an election year or a non-election year. So we're still long. We just finished a session here, end of March, and now we've got to wait till March to get a new session. Although what does happen periodically in Florida is special sessions. And I understand there is going to be a special session coming up on stuff related to insurance. There's still a lot of groups that hope to get, another special session on medical freedom. We did have one special session November of 21 that dealt with some issues relating to some of these freedom issues, vaccine passports, requirements for vaccination at workplaces, et cetera. So we have periodically bubbled up big enough to get a special session. But if we don't do something special, we're waiting till March of 2023 to start having any impact. So the hope is that we can create enough grassroots support to get something done sooner than later, because I think a lot of us feel some more urgency than waiting that amount of time to get back to session.
So that talk, that kind of leads in a little bit with the hospital indemnification. Whoever wants to chime in and talk about how, they tried, or they sneaked that through, what was it, Super Bowl weekend, I believe. So whoever's familiar, I don't know, Tom or Patty, you want to chime in, tell us a little bit about that story, how that went down, and why we need to be proactive instead of reactive.
I'll take that one. So we were in the process of building our coalitions and networking at the time. So we had a pretty good network that was coming together, coming off of special session last fall. And we had a couple of good rallies, the Sanford rally and the Fort Lauderdale rally, where we were continuing to build our networks. And we were gearing up for regular session. We were going to put a rally, and we did put a rally together for regular session in Tallahassee. So everything was geared towards addressing the medical freedom laws that we wanted to talk about, in particular Florida Statute 381. And then, let me silence that.
Yeah, and then one thing you have to remember too about Florida is what usually happens is session starts and a lot of stuff passes at the end. So this bill that Tom's starting to talk about here that he'll go into more detail on, it kind of got moved on an unusual schedule because most things start and most things get passed at the end. This one, they started to move quickly during the middle of session. So I'll pass it back to you, Tom.
Right. Sorry about that. Any case, the Super Bowl weekend, on the week prior to Super Bowl weekend, obviously everybody's in session, regular session. They want to get out of there by Thursday. So out of nowhere, unexpected, the bill starts moving through the hospital indemnity. I believe it's 768. Initially, it was Senate Bill 7014, and it addressed hospital indemnity during COVID, which is Florida statute 768.315, I believe. And they were concerned that in the lead up to COVID, the story was the federal government encouraged states to indemnify their hospitals from COVID-related deaths. Florida is a no-fault state. Injury lawyers are everywhere. So it was very easily adopted by the legislature to indemnify hospitals from COVID deaths through May of 2022. As it came up during regular session in March, just prior to the Super Bowl weekend, there was concern that with the alarming rate of the Omicron spread, that they needed to extend the indemnity. So they kind of rushed it through. They bypassed a lot of the legislative process, and the House side folded it, gave it to the Senate. Senate unanimously approved it and sent it to the governor for signature. This all happened on a Thursday prior to Super Bowl weekend. And of course, the legislature just takes off at that point. So the Shawn and I saw it. Now, there were lobbyists in Tallahassee did not sound the alarm. And the lobbyists really didn't say anything. And we caught it on Thursday. And I called Shawn. I go, what do you think of this? He goes, I don't like it. And Shawn said, I don't like it either. This isn't right. How can we give them approval to run the CDC death protocols for another 16 months, which is basically continuing to use remdesivir in the vent, which we know doesn't work. It's got 80-90% mortality rate. But that's what they wanted. They pushed for it. So Shawn and I were like, nope, this isn't going to work. We have to send a demand letter to DeSantis. So I worked on one side, starting to activate our coalition, expand the coalition. Shawn began the legal writing, all the writing that had to occur to get the demand letter together. And then it had to be published and edited to make sure that we could bring as many people in the coalition on board to sign it. And so basically, we didn't do anything for Super Bowl weekend. Shawn donated 100 hours of his time from his practice. We didn't do anything Super Bowl wise. And by Sunday night of Super Bowl, Dr. Robert Malone was signed on the demand letter.
Amazing.
And by Monday or Tuesday, we had 27. By the end of the week, we had close to 40 groups representing 500,000 people on board with the demand letter. We had one of our activists hand carry it to Tallahassee. Shawn emailed it, and I registered, mailed it to DeSantis. And so our activist handed it to his chief of staff, did a photo op, and then we waited. The following week, we came back to Tallahassee for the rally. We offered the platform of the rally for DeSantis to veto it. Christina Pashaw, their press secretary, admitted that they'd never received so much coordinated incoming on one particular subject, and in this case, demanding a veto of Senate Bill 7014 that would eventually extend hospital indemnity to June of 2023. Despite all the incoming petitions, letter writing, emailing, even the governor's logbook in his office, page after page after page said veto, 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 veto. He ended up signing it that Thursday when it was due to expire. He signed it in a deal with the Senate president to get his somewhat controversial, if you consider him that, I don't, Dr. Lopato, Surgeon General, to get him confirmed. Subsequently to that, there was also a raft of therapeutics that was approved in the state of Florida. Not required or mandated, but approved if the doctor and patient agree to using the therapeutics to treat COVID patients that are in the hospital. So that was the story. The takeaway was, for a rookie organization like ourselves, with a very astute freedom attorney like Shawn, that we were able to recognize this as a threat, that it was unjust, that we kept our focus very, very narrow so we could bring as many people on board as possible. So it wasn't a broad issue, it was a narrow issue, and everybody agreed that it was unjust, that this could not stand or be unaddressed. And so we were able to get that demand letter. Shawn crafted it very, very, very well. We did a press conference that week, and then we went to Tallahassee, hoping and praying that DeSantis would veto it. Vetoing that would have sent shockwaves through the entire country, because it would have said that the remdesivir and vent CDC death protocols were no longer acceptable in our state. It would have had a bigger impact than over-the-counter ivermectin in certain states, Tennessee to be one of them. So although we didn't get the outcome that we were looking for, we did demonstrate that even rookie activists, constituents, civic-minded people from different groups, that we could come together, that we could task organize on a very important issue and make our voices heard. So even though we didn't get what we want, the outcome was that it gave DeSantis some political leverage in other areas where he was able to drive the narrative against the left. And even though you're still running these CDC death protocols, there are some options out there that might save some lives. So there were a lot of good takeaways from it. Phil has a little bit better view on it. It did hurt when we did everything right, and still he signed it. But that's politics. That's the nature of politics. You're not going to win every single time. And when you do win, it may take on a different form. But that doesn't relieve us of our obligation to fulfill our civic duties. And one of those civic duties, besides voting, besides jury duty, our civic duty is we need to engage with our legislators. We prefer to engage with them ahead of time, because if we go to Tallahassee and make our voices heard in front of committee, that's great. But that's probably not going to change the course of things. Certainly, if you show up in Tallahassee, you're demanding a veto, now you're really late. So for people who are early on in this, recognize that Move Freely Florida was less than 6 months old when we did this. And I'm just an airline guy. I don't have any political background. But we were able to stay networked. We moved out of our comfort zones. We answered the call, and we got involved. And so if we can do it, anybody can do it. And it's very important that you really look for opportunities to network, join together with other people. The people you see in front of you today are amazing, amazing Americans. These people are patriots. It's an honor and a privilege to be with them and these other freedom groups in the state of Florida. There's dozens and dozens of leaders that are just incredible people. So I just want to encourage anybody that's watching this, that there is a lot more out there. It's not too big of a hill to climb. Please get out of your comfort zone. Get off your couch. Put down the remote. Go talk to your state legislator and start fighting for your own freedoms. Because if you don't, you're absent in your civic duties. Guess what's going to fill that void? Special interest groups, Chamber of Commerce, big pharma, hospital associations. And they're going to push your legislators with all of their money to legislate things that make sense for them and not make sense for the individual person. So personal freedom, we can't allow the federal government to put our constitutional rights on hold and trample all over our freedoms. They can't do that. I don't care what the circumstances are. There is no national emergency great enough that they can dispense of our constitutional freedoms and run all over states' rights, all over state constitution, and tell you that what you have in your state doesn't matter. That's a lie. That's not true. And they've done that. And so many of our legislators just roll over and said, well, we have to do it because the federal government said we had to do it.
Yeah, and there's a lesson here for the freedom fighting groups. The people who are incrementally moving to take away the freedoms, they appear to be at it constantly, right? They're organized, they stick together, and a fundamental tension that the people who love freedom, people in this room, and anybody listening, that if you're listening, you probably love freedom as well. We've got to stay organized, and we've got to build structures. And fundamentally, a lot of freedom-oriented people are opposed to that. They just want to go about their lives. They want to be away from government or quasi-government or nonprofit structures that are there regularly. But we need that. We need to be watching, as Phil talked about. We need to be talking to our representatives, as Tom talked about. We need to be out there constantly, and we've got to take a new mindset to this. We've got to constantly be monitoring government, because if we are not monitoring what this government's doing, we've seen what they do, right? They grab power, they take power, they just turn it off. They turn off your freedoms. They're like, oh, well, we can't have those freedoms right now because, they're too inconvenient. We need to really change the way this works, and that's going to require, a commitment. Taking time out of your schedule regularly, like Tom talked about. We all got to be part of the structure and put time and money and effort into keeping that structure there so that it can keep fighting for our freedom. Otherwise, the incrementalists are going to keep winning. And what I point to, is we're 2 years into this, over a little over 2 years. We have less freedom now than we did 2 years ago. We are still fighting to get back to where we were 2 years ago. That's not where we want to be, right? Because the next time they take our freedoms, do we go back even farther? And then we're still pushing back to get up to the hill where we once were, 10 or 20 years ago. We want to be moving freedom forward and getting back to where we should have been, 20 or 30 years ago, rather than falling back, and then fighting back. So we've got to really change our mindset about this, and we've got to make this a lifelong commitment.
And I wanted to add something to all those people that sit around and they're really passionate about it as well, but just scared. It's actually not hard to take back our freedoms. Our Constitution is designed this way. But as Tom and Shawn have been talking about, it involves, freedom isn't free. We all have to be out there, and our Constitution was designed for us as a people to always be active. And the corporations and the special interest knew that if we are distracted with other things and have the fear of going in and talking to your representatives, and that fear has been instilled in us as a society, and that laziness has been instilled in us as a society as well, so that they can be filling in that void. And the second you start getting active and organized, which we at Move Freely have that structure where anybody can join, and we try to do whatever we can to assist everybody, to put everybody where they need to be. And that will take down, I mean, you saw from what Tom was saying, just us in 6 months taking time off from our busy schedules to fight this veto. We actually did something. And yeah, Tom did say that I see it in a different perspective. I mean, understanding politics, they chip away at our freedoms in the matter of decades. So they will, the concept is, they're not just going to remove the Constitution overnight. They, will do small little increments where you don't notice because you're looking somewhere else. And we can do the same to get it back. But I think it happens much quicker. I mean, you saw how, what Tom was just saying, just us in the 6 months, we were able to get them looking at us and start discussing options. And we're not fighting a small little fringe group. This is just to give a background. Florida, over the past decades, has been building a massive medical establishment, and that's what is a huge corrupt force that that controls a lot of this. And while we have a great governor, DeSantis, and there are a lot of good fighters out there, we still have that establishment, that medical establishment that's been here for so long, that still holds a lot of the cards. And it just takes anybody watching this to do. You don't need to do too much. Just get involved, speak to your representatives, and in numbers and organization, we move the needle.
Yep. I'm going to take a quick break right here. A shameless plug. I hate asking for money, but we have to do it to support us all. We'll be back in about 15 seconds. As you can all see, people working hard behind the scenes. I'm a single father of 3. Everybody else here has family and children and college or school-age kids. We're funding this fight for freedom out of our pockets, and we desperately need your help. Any money that you can throw our way, we sincerely appreciate it. We recently added the ability to do a monthly donation on movefreelyamerica.org, and we kindly ask for your support so that we can continue to move the football back in the other direction. So back to the show with everybody else. Patty, I'd like to talk to you a little bit. How do you see what's going on from your perspective? Everybody here has a little bit of a different angle. What can you fill in with the conversation here from how you see life in your shoes?
Well, I have to say I'm one of those people that really was just busy living life, raising my girls, going through a divorce, not really paying attention to what's going on in this world, and just this whole all the mandates and everything. It's just been an eye-opening experience. And my airline, really within 24 hours of the mandate being announced back in September, said they were going to comply. We don't have a choice. Get the shot or be fired. And I just thought that's it. I'm not going to sit and do nothing anymore. My first reaction was to send a letter off to my CEO of the company and tell him, this is wrong. It's unlawful. Do the right thing and, fight this with us. But, they still chose to comply with the mandate, and, we all know why. But from that point on, I just decided, I'm going to fight this with a group of employees. As an admin of the group, I guess I'm kind of like a leader with this group, and I'm encouraging them and supporting them. It's really hard to keep them engaged, or to get them engaged to begin with, and to keep them engaged in this.
Right.
And I understand why. Everyone just wants to go back to their life. But
not going to happen.
So do I.
Right.
But I don't think we're going to have a normal life like we knew it before. Everything's changed. This is a long-term thing. I'm not just fighting for myself to keep my job. And I've actually decided, if I have to sacrifice my freedoms and rights to keep my job, I'm not going to do it. No. So, I'm fighting. I am fighting to keep my job. I do want to keep it, but I'm not going to sacrifice for it. I'm fighting for my girls. They got indoctrinated in the public school system here, and it happened, and I wasn't even aware of it until it was already too late. And, so I'm working on them. I want them to see the truth. I always tell them, always seek the truth, keep an open mind. One of
You
my
know,
daughters, I think, is real close. She's my youngest daughter. She's in college. She's studying to be a biomedical engineer. So I'm hoping that,
nice.
Having that career path, being in that industry, she'll start to see what's going on.
Yeah, it was interesting that you say that because Janan Logan is a flight attendant for my airline out in Nevada, and she's running for state assembly out there. And she said the same thing on an interview I did with her a couple months ago, where one of her daughters, same thing, was kind of indoctrinated, and they have disagreements and everything. I mean, and I understand as a parent, like my kids are still in public school, and thank God we're in Texas, and I haven't sniffed. They're the crazy CRT stuff, and it's everywhere. I haven't found it to be here yet, although I should probably look closer. But anyhow, I'm proud of my kids, and as I'm sure you're proud of yours, despite whatever their political beliefs are. But I love how in the airline group specifically, and then now stepping forward into Move Freely America, and then going even further than that, how many flight attendants, and I have to say, especially women, I've said it on several interviews, sadly, it's the women who are fighting the fiercest right now. And in the airline group, in my airline group, the Southwest Freedom Flyers, some of my fiercest and staunchest warriors in the fight for freedom have been women. And it's been amazing. And I wish that more men would stand up and fight with us. But for reasons, society has kind of pushed men down to the bottom. So I'm really happy that we have people like you with us in the group.
Well, I have to say, I'm honored that we have Tom, as our state director of Move Freely Florida. He's been amazing. And I feel like I've met some amazing people just being part of these groups.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of the best parts. Like I said earlier, I mean, I would have never met any of you had it not been for this. And just like all the other people I have interviewed and will continue to interview in the future, I mean, it's brought us all together. So if you just think about the small amount of people we have here, there's 350 people in the Move Freely Florida chat. And then you expand that across America, thousands of people. If you just look at it through a microscope of just our organization, the ripple effect that sends out, right? And that's why we encourage people to stand up and get off your butts. I say it on almost every interview also. Get off your butts and get out there. And if you don't know how to get out there, if you don't know what to do, ask somebody. Get in the Telegram chat, ask somebody, ask me, ask Tom, Patty, Shawn, and we can give you the resources. We have that in Move Freely. We give you a little training seminar on civics and how government's supposed to work. And then we have medicalfreedomact.org, which has the Medical Freedom Act framework on there. And it's the legislation that we're trying to propose to state governments to make sure that we have state rights. And that goes back to the indemnification bill. And what Shawn was saying early in the interview is how, and maybe Shawn, if you want to talk a little bit more about that, or any of you chime in, the draconian laws that are on the books that people in Florida don't realize, because I think it's a big problem in America. Because we're busy and because we're paying taxes and raising kids and working our jobs, we've outsourced, instead of the critical thinking skills where we go say, that's weird. What is that? And go down the rabbit hole for whatever that is. We've outsourced our critical thinking to the media. And I think anybody who's been paying attention the last 2 years, the media is a gigantic source of the problem. I call them propagandists. I think that a large majority of what's out there in mainstream is exactly that. And I don't believe that's a fringe belief. What do you guys think?
Yeah, media is huge. The other thing that we're seeing, particularly at the federal level and now also at the state level, is, this use of executive power, right? The president or the governor, as the case may be, starts pulling levers with money and enforcement and basically can turn laws off and on at a whim. And we saw a massive sea change. I mean, we saw a massive number of executive orders signed when the new president came into office. and suddenly change everything. And people have to be aware of the same things happening at the state level. And, getting back to Florida, there's levers that are sitting there that are authorized by law, such as forced treatment, forced examination, forced testing, forced quarantine, forced isolation. Those levers, the legislature has authorized that. They handed the power to the state health officer. And the way the Florida law is written, the state health officer's got a 60-day run. They declare an emergency. They get to start doing all that stuff for 60 days. And then after 60 days, they need the governor to agree to continue it. So one individual for 60 days, two people getting together for indefinitely could just basically trample the rights of everybody in Florida, take away all their medical freedom.
Do you know where those laws? Do you know where those laws originally came from?
Yeah, that the Florida law came into being originally around 2002, right after September 11th. So there's a model public health law act. There were two different versions of it. The first version was very pro state rights, gave tons of power to the state. After September 11th happened, a lot of states looked at that law. The people who'd written it were trying to get it adopted. Florida jumped in. Florida said, yeah, we need an emergency law. We need to make sure we have something on the books in case there's an emergency. Most other states looked at that law and said, oh my God, there's way too much state power here. We can't adopt this. The writers then went back, revised the law, took a lot of power away from the state, made a more balanced law, renamed it, and then that model act got passed in a lot of other states. So most states, they do have state powers for quarantine and isolation to potentially deal with public health emergencies, but they got a much milder version of the law. Florida got the early version that most states rejected and gives tons of power to the state to deal with emergencies and really potentially trample individual rights. So that's what happened, came in there. And then the law was then readopted after regular session in 2021. So Governor DeSantis and the legislature put their name on this law in 2021, and then it was revised to take the word vaccine out in November of 2021. But when they took the word vaccine out, they still left the forced examination, the forced testing, the forced treatments, the quarantine and isolation. So while it was partially addressed in November of 2021, Florida still has perhaps the most extreme public health law in the entire U.S. that allows the state to have tremendous power over people's bodies as soon as the state health officer says there's a public health emergency.
And who was the governor that the original governor back then that signed that in?
Jeb Bush. So, and it went unanimously through the legislature. And we actually, American Freedom Information Institute, when we were formed, one of the first things we did, and I know you talked about money earlier, Tom, right? Money lets us do things. We paid the state of Florida to pull audio tapes of the hearings, and we had volunteers go through it as one of our first big projects as American Freedom Information Institute, because we wanted to see, were they talking about, forced vaccines and forced treatments and all that? No, they were just, the discussion was very light. It didn't seem like they even really got into thinking about some of the wording in there. We wanted to listen to those legislative hearings from 2002 to see what they talked about. They didn't talk about these issues, which really tells us that, it kind of got pushed through and nobody really thought about the vaccine issues and the forced treatments and all. They just wanted a public health emergency law. But yeah, it goes back originally Jeb Bush, 2002, and it was unanimously approved by the legislature at that time. So at that time, people weren't thinking about these issues. There was no opposition to it.
And I asked you that question because I wanted to make sure for all those people out there that this is not a Republican Democrat thing.
No.
This is about pro-freedom and taking our country back. We're not like, hardcore Republican. I like to use other names, conservatives and whatnot, to distinguish that it's not a party affiliation that we're trying to fight.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you that bill that Tom and I wrote I wrote the letter. Tom was very instrumental in helping build the coalition, sent the letter to the governor asking him to veto the hospital indemnity extension. The Republican legislature voted for that. Almost, I understand there's only one Republican who doesn't always agree with the party, who opposed that bill because he saw how bad it was. Everybody else voted for it. So, it's not about a party line. We're about freedom, individual liberty, and, at least our organization, I think Tom has taken the same philosophy, is, we stand on the issue of medical freedom. And that sometimes aligns us with one political party, sometimes aligns us with the other political party. That's not what matters. We're not here to support a political party. We're not here to, cheer for one team. We're here to get people medical freedom. And, we're going to hold everybody accountable, equal opportunity. If you don't support medical freedom, we're going to call you out, and we're going to push for the issues that support medical freedom. So it's not a party issue, right? This is a issue that cuts across party lines.
Great example of the party problem. We got in a future interview, a group we're affiliated with is running for Congress in Kentucky, and the person they're running against ran on the medical freedom platform, got elected on that. As soon as they got into office, started voting against medical freedom and pro-tyranny laws. And they did a little digging on this guy and found out that he was a consultant for Pfizer. And nobody knew.
Yeah, and that's also part of this too. What we hear from a lot of the politicians, is, well, I've got to look at a particular bill, or this has its pluses or minuses. So, what we really need to do, particularly for those that have been elected and are coming up for re-election, we need to look at their track record. Actions speak louder than words. Whatever they're telling you at the next campaign meeting or when you sit down in their office, that's all well and good. But what have they done in the past? Have they been on the right side or the wrong side of medical freedom? That's really where we need to go, because what they'll do is they'll point to one provision or another provision in the bill that maybe was pro-freedom, but the mass majority of the bill was anti-freedom, right? The hospital indemnity bill, right? The people that supported it say, well, this helps hospitals and it helps people get treatment. Yeah, but at the cost of getting the right treatments or letting the patient pick their treatment, right? That's a bad trade-off in my world. So we got to look at the actual track record, not just what these people are saying on the campaign.
And I wanted to kind of give a shout out for Patty. I mean, so Patty does a lot of research into a lot of this stuff, and you heard her story. If that doesn't inspire anybody who's sitting there, where she's not a political activist that and works for so and so party or anything. She is just like everybody else who has a family, but decided to actually take action and is a true patriot in that aspect to do something about it. And for all those that give that excuse, oh no, I gotta take my kids to soccer practice or whatever. That's not an excuse anymore. That's just distracting the inevitable from happening. You're not taking care of your kids if you're doing that. Whereas Patty decided to do something about it, and she's there, she's researching and putting that information out there, so that just because let's say DeSantis makes an endorsement, okay, well I'm going to vote for that person. Well, no, let's look at that person. We have for example in DeSantis just made an endorsement for the other guy in Ken's district. But that's not a bad thing. It means let's look at that district. So maybe people will start looking into that more. So getting out there, even just researching and taking the time, it doesn't take that much time. Everything else is just an excuse for being lazy. I hate to say it, but that's the reality. So, like a lot of the memes say, be more like Patty in that.
No, that's great. And, circumstances are all different, but I'll tell you, when we had to listen to those audio tapes, the way it worked is the state just they sent us files of, I don't know, 100 hours of audio recordings, right? Because the way the indexes, they're just like, somebody talked about your law during this, tape, and they'd send you a 45-minute tape. And they might be talking about other stuff for part of the 45 minutes. They might talk about your law for 2 or 3 minutes. So we had a lot of, and talking about women getting involved. We had a lot of moms, female moms in this case, who who listened to it in the background, right? They were driving the kids to soccer practice, or they were making a meal in the kitchen, and they just had the audio tape of the legislature playing in the background, listening for these sections on medical freedom and talking about this.
That's
So
exactly what I do
there's ways to get involved,
when I'm
right?
cooking dinner. I have
Yeah.
podcasts on, videos on.
Yes, there's ways you can build it into your life. There
Yeah.
are. We can be creative and we can make this work, and we all need to get more people. And believe me, if you can do something small regularly, you can be a huge help.
Yeah,
Well,
I mean,
it's been
I'll
a huge
go ahead.
learning experience for me, not having any kind of political background, but I just feel there's nothing more important I can do with my free time right now than to fight for medical freedom.
Yeah.
Amen.
Yeah, I mean, I was just like Patty. I mean, a couple of years ago, I was sitting on my butt, not doing anything, enjoying life like everybody else. I never thought in a million years that I'd be helping to run an organization for medical freedom, or possibly running for office, or coordinating anti-mandate organization against a major U.S. corporation. I just never thought in a million years, and God works in amazing ways. And
Amen.
the foundation of that is not being passive. And I posted in the Southwest Freedom Flyers channel a couple days ago a rather crass podcast by a guy in St. Louis, Missouri, who owns his own company. He sells like protein powder. I can't think of a name for that. I mean, protein powder, workout supplements and stuff like that. His name is Andy Frisella. And he just calls a kettle black. And that podcast was a call to men, telling men stand up and fight. And he said specifically, your passiveness is costing us right now. And I think that's exactly the thing. Stop being helpless. Ask questions. And that's what I said before. I encourage everybody to, if you want to help and you don't know what to do, ask somebody and we will tell you. We can show you the way. It's really not that hard. And we understand you have a life and you can't commit 100 hours a week or 100 hours a month even to the cause. And we get that. And you have to take breaks. And it is a mental struggle too. You go through ups and downs. I mean, it's a hell of a roller coaster, but every day, if we put one foot in front of the other and continue pressing, we will win. No doubt in my mind, we will win because we have God and truth at our back.
Absolutely.
So that's about an hour and 10 minutes, probably as long as the American attention span can last. I would love to have all of you come back on a future interview and get into some more in-depth discussion. Shawn, give us a plug for what you got going on, your Substack, your organization. Where can people find you?
Yeah, American Freedom Information Institute, amfreedomii.com. Also at Substack under American Freedom Information Institute. We just publish a regular newsletter, usually daily, with quick tips about how you can be a better advocate, what's happening here with Florida law, things you can write letters about and get involved with. But, we're really in that long-term mindset at this point. Like, we need to build a big team to keep watching over our elected officials and improve these laws, rewrite these laws, get medical freedom in there. We're also looking at potentially forming another organization to amend the Florida Constitution. So there's interest there where American Freedom Information Institute's educating about that possibility, but build a ground game to potentially lock medical freedom into the Constitution. It's something that's probably missed. It should have been in the Constitution when they wrote it the first time. We can fix it. We can get medical freedom as a fundamental right recognized in the Constitution. So that's what we'd like to see happen too. I think it would be good for people if we get that done. So it would fix a lot of these legislative issues. It takes some of that power away from the legislature so they can't take our freedoms away.
Is there any way people can donate to you or your cause?
Yeah, there's a donation link on amfreedomii.com. We've got PayPal and some other things, and we also did have a monthly option as well. So we appreciate the support. It's important. We have expenses, software, email, office space. We try to be very careful with the money, but it costs money to stay out there in front of people and have a real organization that can, respond to emails, can respond to telephone calls, that can have a separate address for our mailings to make it clear that we're a separate organization. So your support is really appreciated. It helps us get the cause and keep the cause moving forward.
And if any other lawyers happen to come across this and you're interested in doing work like Shawn's doing and donating your time to an organization such as ours, please contact me or any of the other members in this group and help us build that coalition across all industries so that we can protect freedom. So thank you all kindly from the bottom of my heart for being involved. It's been an absolute pleasure knowing all of you and working with you. And I'll see you on the other side. If you guys want to hang out, you can hang out. We'll talk after the stream ends, but I'll just say a few pieces and then we'll cut the recording. I appreciate everybody tuning in and listening today. It was a longer stream, but absolutely essential and important in the work that everybody in Move Freely Florida is doing, not only the membership there, but the leadership, some of the best leaders we have in the entire organization. And I'm proud to know them. And it's been a pleasure working with them. So again, please, if you can help us or you'd like to donate to Shawn or you'd like to donate to Ken Davenport running in District 35, we all need your financial support. So please donate. MoveFreelyAmerica.org for us. And we recently added that again, recurring monthly donation. I know that I donate to Ken's campaign on a monthly basis. And I know Shawn absolutely needs your help too. We can't do this without money. And we absolutely need to stay relevant and out there. So thank you everybody for coming and tuning in. We'll talk to you next week on the stream. Have a great day.